Welcome back to the FantasyLabs podcast. This is a special edition podcast. I'm here with co-founder Jonathan Bales, and we do these periodically when we announce new things for a product for our season. So Jonathan has joined me on the podcast to talk about the new NFL product for 2016. Bales, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, yeah. My pleasure. So we're going to go through all the new exciting NFL stuff, and it is quite lengthy, the list of new stuff we have. We had talked in MLB how it was really cool when we first started FantasyLabs over a year ago now. We started with MLB, and when we got back to MLB in April, it was our first chance to really improve on a product. And we talked in our podcast about MLB how we like the opportunity to improve on an existing product and to bring new data, new features and tools. And I think we've really got the chance to do that in NFL, and I think we sort of outdone the MLB side, even though that's been great. And we have some really cool things for NFL coming. So let's talk through these, Jonathan. So let's start with the data. We have a ton of new data in our models and trends. And I'm just going to sort of run through, and I'll let you talk about what we have and why it's so exciting and predictive and useful for users. So let's start with red zone data. That's obviously something that we have new in models and trends. And why was that an important thing for you to have in our models?
I think that's just obviously important in daily fantasy football. Which players are consistent scorers in terms of efficiency, and then who's getting the majority of the looks. So we've broken that up. All of the stats really, I think, by the past month, the past 4 weeks, and then the prior 12 months. Red zone, I think, is just very important. And we've also done inside like the 5, inside the 10, and then all of red zone. So we have that in models for every player, and then also in trends. So you can start to test these things. So, it's not an automatic. We know that, say, red zone workload matters overall, but it's not a given that it leads to daily fantasy value. It might be priced into salaries. So having that in trends is a really cool thing to test. It's just really useful in figuring out how much or if you should be weighting a certain thing within your model.
Yeah, and having the sort of the short-term versus long-term metrics, I think, are always useful because, like, you could have a guy like Bryan who hasn't scored in the red zone, or just been sort of fluky. He has like a 40% red zone success rate. And if you see that he has, only a 5%, assuming that Romo is in, then that's sort of a red flag in your models that he might be due for some regression in that area, correct?
Sure. Yeah. There's so much variance over the course of a month. It's also good just to see which guys are getting more looks. If there's a change in role, and a guy is now getting the ball near the goal line, that's obviously important.
Gotcha. Some other types of data that we have is market share data. What does that mean for people who may not know, and why is it important?
Market share is the percentage of a particular stat that one player takes up on his team. So if there have been 10 touchdowns scored and one player has 4 of them, that's 40% market share of touchdowns. And I like it. I got it from RotoViz initially. I don't know if they created it, but that's where I first saw it. And the idea is it's really good for projecting rookies from college, especially receivers. It's most useful for running backs and receivers. Receivers probably being number one, because what it does is it can adjust for market share over the past month can adjust for opponent quality, because if you're playing a bad opponent, then probably everyone, if you're a receiver, the other pass catchers on your team have probably been not performing that well also. So you'll still have probably a high percentage. And it can adjust for quarterback quality as well. Receivers all have the same quarterback throwing to them. So if one's doing much better than his teammates, and he'll have a high market share where he might not necessarily have really good bulk stats. So I think it's just ultimately it's more predictive than most bulk receiver metrics.
Would you equate it to like usage rate in basketball?
Yeah, probably. It's something like that.
Yeah, which is obviously really important for basketball. So awesome that we have it. We have a ton of data on defenses, which I think is sort of something that people don't necessarily look at too much. People just sort of, okay, let me get the wide receivers that I want. Let me get my core quarterback correlation. Let me get the running backs that I like. And then, okay, I got this much money left. Let me plug in a defense. Just sort of that fits with the lineup and the remaining salary that I have. Whereas, we have a ton of data that actually is going to help users have an edge in that regard. What sort of defensive data do we have this year and that you're looking forward to?
The big thing is hurries. So we're going to have hurries from Pro Football Focus, and we can do a lot of things with that. So just knowing how often sacks are so fluky that it's like you can't use sacks to grade a pass defense. There's so much that goes into it, and sacks are, I think they around 1/4 of all pressures converts to a sack. So obviously it's better if you want to predict sacks. You're better off for the most part just quantifying pressure, who's getting the most pressure on the quarterback, and then even takeaways like interceptions and fumbles are not that easy to predict if you look at past takeaways. It's much easier if you look at hurries. Like all of defensive scoring basically comes from pressure. So just quantifying and figuring out which teams are getting to the quarterback and then which teams are getting to the quarterback a lot and just not bringing him down. So they're more likely to see their salary drop because they just haven't been producing of late. And it could just be that they're getting very unlucky. And then off of that, we're going to be projecting sacks based off of a variety of things, but looking at the individual hurry rates of the linemen. So we'll know the starting linemen and the starting defense, starters across the board, and then can sort of match that up. Okay, these guys get this many hurries per rush, and these linemen have this sort of pass pro, and then can project hurries and then ultimately sacks from there. So I think that'll be really useful. And then we have like just success rate data, which is how often a play helps or hurts a team in terms of their chances of winning. It's really good for rushing the ball. So if a defense gives up, if an offense, let's say, gives up or runs for 2 yards on 3rd and 1, that's good, right? That was a positive play. But if you're just looking at yards per carry or something like that, it wouldn't be reflected in that. And so we can adjust for that with things like sack or success rate. And then we have a few other, obviously all the red zone data and other takeaway data, touchdown percentages, a whole bunch of additional stuff. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the hurries.
Yeah, that's cool. Are hurries more correlated with takeaways and interceptions than any other metric?
From what I've found, yes. I'm sure that you can do some things, maybe combining that with additional stats, but it's certainly more predictive than past takeaways.
Yeah, and some of the cool things about this data is that we have a lot of opportunity for cool studies in the future. We have all this data, and now we can sort of turn it into studies and research to put out there. So some more data that we have, efficiency and opportunity metrics. And these are some unique ones that are unique to fantasy football as opposed to just sort of regular NFL stats like hurries. What are the efficiency opportunity metrics that we're going to have in trends, and why are they important?
I mean, we have like fantasy points per opportunity. I think that it's really important for guys are in new situations. So a running back gets hurt and a new one's coming in, and you want to see, what he's done in his opportunities in the past, or early in the year where you have guys who maybe get traded and they're on a new team and they're going to have a different role, and you can see maybe how efficient they've been. I think market share is good with that too. Early in the year, you can look at market share, and if I had really big market share on a team that just didn't throw the ball a lot, and he gets traded to a spot where they're going to throw the ball and he's going to be involved, then that's just a really good sign. So any time you can use an efficiency metric like that per opportunity types of things, I think that's generally beneficial.
Awesome. And the last piece of data that we will discuss, there's just so much stuff that we're going to show you guys. So really excited for that. But the last one we'll touch on here is ownership, which is going to be a big part of a lot of things that we do for the 2016 NFL DFS season. So I won't spoil it, Jonathan. I'll let you talk about ownership and what we have this year.
Yeah, so we have past ownership. We have that in trends now. So anytime you do create a trend to find value, you'll also see the ownership. So you can start to potentially create trends for tournaments, looking at things that are undervalued by other DFS players. And we're also going to have ownership projections. And so we'll have those all over the site, really, but the main spot is in player models. So it'll be right there with the other projections of points. We'll project ownership. It'll be in the multi-lineup tool on the My Lineups page, and just going to be placing a generally much larger emphasis on ownership past and future this year.
Yeah, huge hedge to be had in that regard. Which sort of segues into our content, because we're going to have a lot of content on ownership, including some different podcasts this year. What is the content going to look like this year for FantasyLabs for NFL, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited to. We're gonna just help people, I think, be more cognizant of it, and hopefully be posting some ownership numbers after contests are out, which can be you can use it just for fun. It's interesting to know, and you can also use it to change your lineup. So if you obviously if you have FanDuel's ownership percentages from Thursday, that can and should adjust how you play on Sunday, and so that'll be reflected in the site. Those numbers will dictate what we do with the ownership projections, and then we'll also have analysis on that. And I believe you're on a pod with Jay, so that'll be good. And we have another matchups oriented pod similar to last year. So I think the content's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I am very excited about that for sure. Okay, so we have a lot of different features. We sort of moved past the data side things, but we have features. Some of them you've seen in our other sports, and some of them are a bit new. Let's start with the Vegas dashboard. This is something that people have seen, obviously, in MLB. What sort of things are the same for NFL? What are you excited about? Do you think it's just as useful for NFL as it is in other sports?
Yeah, but in a different way. I don't think the lines are useful for certain positions more than others, maybe more at running back, say, than wide receiver or something like that. But I'm really excited about the dashboard. So it's similar to MLB. If you go there, that's a free product that we offer. And the cool thing that we have is we just have like every piece of Vegas data. So we have implied totals, team totals, and overall totals, and spread, and the spread betting percentages, so you can see where money's coming in. And one cool thing that I found just researching this offseason is how correlated betting percentages are in NFL to ownership in DFS. So I think that's going to be a pretty cool way to help predict ownership and which guys might be highly owned, is to look at those ownership percentages, and then everything on that Vegas dashboard updates in real time. So if there's a big bet or the line moves at all, we get it right away. So it's just generally going to be very useful. I use it every day in MLB.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah, it's cool to see, especially over a sport where it's over a full week, to see where a line opens and where it closes, and how that is affected by the percentage of bets coming in. So just a cool page to have up when you're doing your NFL research. I think will be really useful to people. One thing that is a brand new page this year, and not something we really have for any other things because it's NFL specific, is a new matchups page. What is that going to look like, and what can users expect?
I don't know. We're still building it, so we'll find out when it's done. But the idea is to give people a glance at, football is so sort of like it's such a team game. Like if you remove one player from a defense, one pivotal player, somebody can have a dramatic effect on the defense and on the opposing offense. And so visualizing everything like in one area I think is important. So we're going to have that. We're going to have this matchups page where we allow you to visualize starters for each team, and we'll be updating that. And if like quarterback is going to shadow, and we know that just looking at beat reporters or something, then we'll move him over top of that receiver, and we're just going to do things that help you sort of see what a team is going up against. And I think that that's going to be really good, but it's going to be more than just like a depth chart thing. We're going to have all of this data. We're going to have a lot of our advanced data, red zone data, ownership projections, although those won't be free, fantasy specific data, some FantasyLabs data, and then individual and team level. So it's just a way to sort of look at a matchup, get a sense of what's going to be going on in a game, and then do that like in one place where you can take in a matchup really, really easily with everything sort of like color coded, and you just get a sense, okay, this guy is in a good spot, this guy's not.
This guy's going against Byron Maxwell.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's gonna be an awesome page. Still building it, but it's probably the page I'm most excited about. One thing that the MLB product has is this really cool stacking tool where you can you can generate stacks, and it'll generate based on like your model rating. Have you ever thought about doing that for NFL, Bales?
We are.
Oh.
It's going to be different for NFL a bit. Stacking is obviously different in football. Not stacking entire teams usually. So you'll get to pick what types of stacks you want to look at. So quarterback receiver is the default, but you could do running back defense. You could do quarterback 2 receiver, quarterback receiver tight end, whatever you want. And then we just search for, I think, top 200 combinations. So if you're trying to like optimize for rating, okay, I trust my model and I want the top quarterback receiver trios based on my model. We'll give you the top 200, and then you can see like their ownership, their total cost. You can put them into lineup builder or multi-lineup tool or whatever. So you can do that for rating or pro trends or projected plus minus or whatever you want. And then it's just a really good way to sort of build lineups and not just an individual plug and play sort of way, which isn't, I mean, when you're building lineups, there's correlations and there's a lot that goes into it than just finding the best value. So I think this will help with some of those correlations that are important.
Yeah, it's an easy way to see, how much your stack costs, the projected ownership of it in relation to the value and the rating of your model. So that's going to be really cool. Are you whole team stack this year?
Yeah, I'm not against it. It just depends. When. Generally, I think that it's underutilized. Not a whole team like quarterback. I think you can go like 4 players in certain situations, which most people would never do. A lot of people will never even go 3, and I think you can do that like very often, almost every week. You can probably go quarterback, receiver, or it just depends on the situation. But yeah, I'm not afraid to go. Yeah, I'll go running back with quarterback, receiver. Also, it just depends on the team, obviously, and like how they distribute points. I might not. Certain teams, you might be more likely to do that. But yeah, I'm more for it than probably the average player, I would say.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the metagame of tournaments and how correlations and stacking plays out this year. I think that's going to be really interesting to track. And then the last sort of tool that we'll discuss, Bales, is the lineup builder. It's the multi-lineup builder, and it allows you to generate a ton of lineups and then to save them and export them to DraftKings and FanDuel. Is this sort of the same thing as what we've seen in MLB?
Kind of. It's the same concept. The multi-lineup tool we're talking about. So yeah, you can do 1, 2, or 2 to 500 lineups. You have different filters. We have, there's like a flex in NFL, so you can pick which positions you would allow in the flex. And then there's like rules where you can force stacks. No matter what, you have to have a stack. You can do different rules, like I only want one running back from a particular game. And then there's the filters like MLB, but a new filter that we have that we'll add to MLB also is the ability to pick a certain percentage of players that you want to consider, which is a natural way to narrow down the player pool. So like you can say, okay, I only want to consider a player if he's in the top 10% in my model at his position, or the top 15% or whatever it is. And so if you go with like, say top 10% or 7%, you're not going to diversify at all, which is fine. But you can create 100 lineups and they'll barely be diversified because you're only using a very small player pool. Whereas if you don't want to diversify that much, you can expand that. But I think that that's a way around a weakness we had in the past, which was that you had to go through a few different steps to get lineups maybe built in the way that you want. And now what you can do is it's fairly simple to pick the exact player pool that you want. I only want these guys. You can exclude anyone that you don't want who still fits within those parameters, and then build around that. So I'm looking forward to that because I think it's now a tool that you can use, do a couple very minor things and get lineups that are very, very good. Whereas in the past, it was still very useful, but there were extra steps that I think we've alleviated now.
Yeah, it's easier to build a core that you like a lot, and all the high end and really profitable DFS players talk about how important it is for them to build, even when they're putting in 150 NFL lineups in a single tournament, how important it is for them to build a core that they believe in. So
sure,
yeah, for sure. Okay, so just a couple last questions for you, Bales. This one's a two-parter. What data point out of all of the new data that we have, and there's a ton of it, what data point or metric was more predictive or sort of surprised you in its predictive power? Now that we've seen it, you've done some research on it, and how is just the data in general going to affect how you personally play NFL DFS? Obviously, you're running labs, but you're also a full-time, NFL DFS player. You play a lot of volume. So I know that this is not only a business venture for you, but also helps for your own lineup building. So I think people are probably curious how it's going to affect your personal lineup building as well.
Yeah. The first one, I think the money line percentages that I talked about were very surprising to me because it's not like, people are betting against the spread. It's not a given that they're always betting on the better team, or even if they were, that should be priced into DFS salaries too. Like better teams have better players who cost more. So that was really surprising to me and something that I'm utilizing to predict ownership for sure. In terms of how I'm changing how I play, I think that just through things like that and other research I've done on ownership, I'm probably going to be playing lineups that are less likely to fade chalk this year, actually. So I'm going to have I think a more extreme approach when it comes to ownership, where I think that it's very easy to recognize like obvious value that's going to be highly owned. That's very easy, and we know those guys are in good spots. You just know it, and everyone knows it. And then I think it's pretty easy to identify guys who are not going to be in a lot of lineups for whatever reason, like guys that are going to be in, say, 3% or 2% or less. They're never going to like surprise you in like 20% of lineups, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in the middle, it's sometimes difficult to determine like exactly how good of a value a guy is. It's sometimes difficult, like you might think he's in 8% of lineups and he's in 20. That's not that surprising. So it's difficult to predict in the middle there. And I think that has caused me and other people problems in the past, where sometimes you're trying to balance value with ownership on every pick, when really what matters is the lineup and how it's constructed and how that affects your chances of winning a tournament. And so I think that what I'm going to be doing is more extreme sort of player selection where I'm just going to take the very, very obvious value and then go and maybe like 3/4 of the team is like a cash lineup, and then go very contrarian in a couple spots as opposed to trying to balance it with each pick. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'll let you know how it works out.
Interesting. It sounds like Taleb's barbell investment strategy.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Exactly.
You're a Taleb apologist, which I appreciate. Any new strategies you're really looking forward to? I mean, we talked about team stacking. I guess maybe the barbell strategy is another one. Anything else that you're sort of curious about seeing, the direction of NFL DFS this year?
No, I mean, that would be the main one. I guess flex usage is always interesting to me. Mm-hmm. But it's probably going to be mostly dependent on how DraftKings prices players. So how they price positions, they seem to be getting better at it.
Especially tight ends, I assume.
Yeah, it used to be. It's an interesting question though. Like if you're playing cash, how cheap does a tight end need to be where you play him in the flex? It's like naturally you don't want to do that. It's very volatile for most guys, but at the same time, like you're looking for value for the most part. So how often do you take on a tight end who's super cheap? Because they have like no floor on tight ends. They go down to like $1. I think you can get them for $1. They go down to like almost nothing. Whereas like on FanDuel, there is a pricing floor. I think 4,500. So the opportunity cost of taking like Gronk or someone on DK is obviously greater than on FanDuel, where you should like always be playing him on FanDuel. And that dynamic is cool to me too. Like how if you play on two different sites, how your strategy might change. Like if you only play on DK, you're going to play Gronk, whereas if you play on both, you might never have a Gronk lineup on DK, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's interesting. Eventually in DFS, we might have negative value where you get an extra 500 in salary if you roster some bad player or something.
Like Justin Hunter.
Like Justin Hunter, yeah. You have to increase your salary cap, but you have to use him in a spot. That'd be interesting. Okay, so we'll end it there. And Jonathan, I appreciate you coming on. It seems like you have so much NFL knowledge. You should write like an NFL DFS book.
Yeah, I should do that. Yeah. I should do that.
Yeah, I'll let you quickly plug your book. I've almost finished with it, but
okay. Really no plug needed. But how do you like it?
It's really good. Yeah, no, I like that it's very very focused around the psychology of DFS, which I think is, as a tournament player myself, I think that's sort of the most interesting thing. Sort of just projecting value is fine, but sort of the metagame and how to get past your own biases and how to predict ownership and how to deal with all of that in tournaments, I think is the most interesting part of DFS, and it's really where DFS is going. So I think it was sort of the perfect book for NFL DFS for this 2016 season. So I've enjoyed it so far.
Thank you. Yeah, it was not that fun to write, but I wrote it, so you can buy it now.
Yeah, it's like the 17th book that you've written? Something like that?
I think it was only 15, man.
15. I'm trying to give you an extra 2 books here. You can just say, yeah, that sounds right.
Right. I don't even know. I think it's 15. I think there were a couple like preview ones that I did though.
Right. Maybe 17. Okay. All right. We will end it there. Bales, thanks, man, for coming on. Everyone, we're really excited for you guys to check out all of the new NFL stuff. I guess by the time that you were listening to this podcast, it will be available to you to go check it out, the free stuff and the premium stuff. So please go check that out. And we'll talk to you guys a little bit down the line.